Standardised uniforms were first introduced in English public schools hundreds of years ago. Today, they're worn in over 90% of English schools. Many people are calling for school uniform rules to be changed. They're seen as pointless and outdated. A secondary school teacher in Derbyshire, who chose to remain anonymous, has stated that regular uniform checks are disruptive for pupils and give teachers unnecessary work. School uniforms aren't commonplace in many other European countries, or the US and Canada. So, why are they used here? Firstly, a uniform projects a professional and cohesive image of a school. Everyone looks like part of a community. And from a safety perspective, a uniform makes it easy for staff to identify who is and who isn't a student. A uniform policy also limits opportunities for bullying. Students aren't under pressure to wear fashionable and trendy outfits to school every day. And it reduces perceived socio-economic inequalities between peers. You can't tell who is rich and who is poor from their clothes if everyone's wearing the same thing. Wearing a uniform is associated with improved attendance and obedience in the classroom. But a uniform has no measurable effect on academic performance. Secondary school uniforms typically include a collared shirt, trousers or a skirt, and a jumper. Ties and blazers are also common. Around half of children say they find uniforms uncomfortable to wear. The clothes are typically made from artificial fabrics, which can be itchy and less breathable than natural fibres. Tight necklines and protruding labels can be distracting, particularly for those who have sensory issues. Wearing uncomfortable clothes is associated with distraction and increased cognitive load, thus limiting pupils' abilities to focus on their lessons. Traditional school uniforms may actually be a hindrance to learning. I had a woolen blazer when I was in secondary school. Have you ever smelt wool when it gets wet? Not the best choice for the UK. I worked in a school uniform shop several years ago, so I've got a few things to say on this topic. Despite being compulsory at the vast majority of schools, parents are required to purchase the children's uniform themselves. A 2015 study found that annual uniform costs averaged £212.68 per child, and that was over a decade ago. Parents have reported going into debt or switching off the heating to afford school uniform for their children. When I worked in the shop, I saw parents stressing about uniform prices on a daily basis. Another thing I noticed was the discrepancy between schools. Some schools just needed pupils to have a branded jumper and PE polo shirt. Others required specific blazers, jumpers, ties, skirts, and every type of sportswear imaginable. It seemed highly unfair to me that uniform prices could vary so much between comprehensive schools. Since I worked at the shop, the government has updated their school uniform guidance, asking that schools limit the number of compulsory branded items. Many branded items of uniform are only sold in one specific local shop. This can result in unnecessary markups on items, because that shop has the monopoly. And in some schools, uniform requirements change with age. I understand why this exists from the school's perspective. You can rapidly identify the age of a pupil, so you can spot if they're somewhere they're not supposed to be. But annual uniform changes drive the cost up even further. Plus, there's also a gender difference in uniform prices. Non-specific uniforms sold at supermarkets, like shirts and trousers, are 11.87% more expensive for girls' items than boys' items, and that's not including branded uniform items. Girls are frequently required to wear a school-specific skirt, while boys can wear generic trousers. School uniforms are often too cold in the winter and too hot in the summer. Heat waves and school uniforms really don't mix, especially since UK schools rarely have air conditioning. High classroom temperatures can lead to fainting, vomiting, and poor concentration. The government advises educational institutions to relax their uniform policies during extreme weather, but the decision lies with each individual school. In some classrooms, pupils have to ask for individual permission to remove a jumper or blazer. This impedes on lesson time, and occasionally teachers refuse, leaving the pupil to struggle in the heat. Uniforms in hot weather is also a gendered issue, but this time affecting boys. At most schools, girls are allowed to wear skirts during the summer, but boys can't wear shorts. One argument for school uniforms is that it prepares pupils for workplace dress codes. But in 2026, I don't personally think it's very relevant. Of course, certain jobs do have uniforms, but these are typically less restrictive and more comfortable than secondary school uniform requirements. People who are self-employed choose what they wear to work. And in office environments, everyday dress codes have shifted away from business suits towards smart casual. Chinos, polo shirts, and quarter zips are becoming more popular. Almost 2/3 of British secondary schools require their pupils to wear a tie. But you rarely see ties in the world of work. MPs are no longer required to wear ties in Parliament, And it's not uncommon to see world leaders with open collars. Researchers found that wearing a closed collar and tie can restrict blood flow to the brain by up to 7.5%. That doesn't sound very conducive to learning. Schools are increasingly aware of the problems associated with expensive, restrictive, and uncomfortable uniforms. Formal uniforms create barriers to natural movement and play, making children less physically active. At the moment, less than a fifth of children in the UK are meeting physical activity targets, so this shift is more important than ever. To counteract this, some primary schools in North East England have opted for active play uniforms, swapping formal uniforms for sports tops, jogging bottoms and trainers. The benefits have been huge. Engagement in physical activity has increased, while uniform costs have decreased. The less formal outfits particularly benefit girls, and they now engage in more active play at break times. Younger children are increasingly independent, as they don't need to struggle with zips, buttons or tights. And the quality of PE lessons has improved, partly because children aren't spending half the lesson getting changed. These changes aren't limited to primary schools. From September 2026, Ulverston Moor Academy in Derby is replacing the blazer, shirt and tie with a polo shirt and all-weather jacket. The school are committed to a progressive and accessible learning environment, and they hope that this change will improve engagement in classrooms. The uniform switch is optional for pre-existing students at the academy, so parents aren't required to spend extra money. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on school uniforms in the comments. Are they outdated or not?